sound.
Oh, now there is. There wasn't before, but now you can hear the behind the scenes.
Hey. Hi,
And
Mark.
if I could just get both sides of my mustache to do the same thing on the same day, I'd probably have the perfect beard.
Just get rid of the mustache. Keep
That's
the beard.
the best part of the... No! Like, what? Yeah, just get rid of the best part of a beard. Just have the chin strap. Yeah, everybody loves that Amish look. Oh, wait, no, nobody does. That's why, because it's weird looking. You need the awesome mustache. I hope Brian Lumley shows up.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure he will.
Did he respond to the invite? I hope.
I don't even think so.
He
no,
didn't when
not.
when I looked a little while ago.
He's like, an 80-year-old dude. Who knows who does his Facebook for him?
He's 80.
I don't know. I'm just estimating.
Oh, how many people we have in the...
4.
4? I mean, we started late, so should we give leeway or should we just start? Nick, it's up to you.
Now we have 5.
I've got... Oh, so... Good news, Nick. You don't have to decide. We're starting.
Okay.
Why is there no sound?
I don't know. Why is there no sound? Oh, probably because I switched computers, so maybe there won't be any sound.
Okay, well, it's playing, so...
Whatever. Here we go. What a night. Everything has gone wrong. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. My name is Dave, and this is a live show, the classic #Flamingo Friday live show that we've all come to know and love around here. So, as you can probably tell by the title and by all the advertising, there's $1 million budget on this episode. Advertising budget alone. So let's go right into it. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the show. My name is Dave, and this is a Fistful of Podcasts YouTube live show. I am very sleepy. I just put my son to bed, so I'm going to have a little bit of this flamingo-inspired coffee.
Yummy.
That's good. Let me introduce you to my guest, my co-host for the show, talking with me about your and my favorite author. We've got Nick Covolo back on the show. There he is up there in the corner. Bam.
Woo.
Hey, everybody.
What's up?
Half immune to COVID, so...
Half immune,
Things are
halfway
looking up.
there.
Perfect.
Yep.
We all got to get there sometime. We were talking a little bit before the show, obviously, as one beard owner to another. I had to say, hey, nice job. It's also nice. I feel like maybe COVID has also like loosened employers up and stuff regarding beards.
Probably.
Mine was always pretty easy going, but now I could pretty much do anything. I'd be like, oh, COVID.
Yeah.
COVID.
So if you are showing
It's
up,
hidden half the time anyway. So.
yeah, I mean, that's the thing. So, now, okay, let's talk about beards for just a minute, Nick, because I need to talk to somebody who wears a mask. Obviously, you're not an anti-masker, and you own a beard. So when you put on the mask, is it like the first thing that happens, it just smashes your entire mustache directly into your mouth, right?
Mine, it actually goes up my nose.
Really? Okay. So
Yeah.
you have much. So here's the thing. My mustache has got like a year behind it. So the hairs in it are relatively long. So that's why I'm not getting much of the nose action.
Yeah.
The early days I was. So yeah, that's the thing. I don't know. I can comb this thing to the side, left and right all day. And the thing about a mustache is it's deceptively long. You say, oh, it's just a mustache. And then you comb it down to be like, because you're always doing this. You're always pulling it out of your face. You're always pulling it out of your face. So, when you do the comb down, hit it with the blow dryer and it goes down past your chin, you're like, holy shit. Something's up. And that's why when I wear a mask, it literally touches the back of my throat.
Ugh.
Yeah.
So that's why I try and not talk to people as much as possible, which is hard for me. In a mask, anyway. So, Nick, here we are. We are breaking down another classic Lovecraft story.
Yes.
Classic to me, anyway. There's a special place in my heart for all of his Southwest locales. Yeah,
Yeah,
some would
that's
say,
very understandable.
yeah, some would say Oklahoma, which is the setting here, is not the Southwest, but it's close. It's close.
Mhm.
I'll take it.
So is this what you're going to talk about? Is it like the intro to Yig? Like, are you going to be able to talk? Are you going to say what it is?
Yeah, this is okay. So
For the
here's
unknown.
what I was gonna do. I was just thinking, let's break down the story, and afterwards, I would give you all the details of like when it was written and stuff. Because it's got this has an interesting backstory behind it, and I feel like I need to unpack it first because this was the first of 3, and after we go over it, I think it'll give you a little more insight. So, cracking right off into it, this story takes place in 1925. Our protagonist, who, as so often is the case with Lovecraft, goes unnamed, right? I'm pretty sure I've listened to the audiobook a few dozen times and I've read the actual book like a dozen. Never caught the dude's name, unless you caught it and I didn't.
No, I don't think he's just an Indian ethnologist.
Yeah, which is
as far as I can tell.
so crazy. Like he's the most insanely specific character in the world. So our protagonist is an Indian ethnologist who has come to Oklahoma for the snake lore. What? And that's all he's saying. Like, yeah, I just came to Oklahoma looking for some snake lore. You know, I'm a native ethnologist, so you know, white people, you probably think this is like that's the thing. A lot of this is like, you know, his introduction is like, you know, I love studying native ethnology, yada, yada, yada. But you white people won't understand it because it's so weird and primitive. Like he can't even, while he's building up, like I study these people and take it from me, who knows, they're less than us white people. And I was like, but you know, for the time.
Yeah.
So, when our dude goes to Oklahoma and no one will talk to him, right? He goes out and he's trying to get some snake legend stuff, and he doesn't even know. Like he doesn't know about Yig. He doesn't know about any of the legends. He's just like, hey man, he's just asking random anybody, white dudes, red dudes. He doesn't talk to any women, obviously, because they don't know. Never talk. Oh no, he does talk to old Grandma Compton later. I forgot. Sorry.
Old ladies are wiser.
Well, we'll get into it.
Okay.
So, basically, he's like getting the runaround, right? He comes to Oklahoma. He's like, hey, anybody know about any snake legends? And everybody does the Innsmouth thing where they don't. If you're going to try and hide a horrible, like, elder god or a monster or whatever from somebody, like, practice lying to somebody. All you got to do is when the weirdo or the new guy comes to town, just, hey, have a town meeting before the next stranger. Say, hey guys, all the fish people in Innsmouth, all the weirdos wherever in whatever locale. Just say, hey, when a stranger comes in and asks about all the weird shit, pretend like you don't even act weird, because that's the first thing everything does. Everybody's like, like I just feel
everybody
like
be cool.
Yeah, everybody rolls up. Like our ethnologists, I feel like everybody is at their old general store. You got the old guy whittling, you got the old guy plucking the banjos and spitting. He rolls up and he's like, hey, anybody know anything about snake lore? And everybody just like freezes and gets all tense and they go, nope, never heard of it. Like any idiot would be like, obviously there's something here.
Yeah, I guess randomly choosing Oklahoma to look for snake lore was a wise idea.
Yeah, like if I go somewhere and if I say, hey, have you seen this thing? And they go, nope, never heard of it in my life. I go, I believe you. But if hey, have you heard of this thing? And they go, and they scream and they run for the hills. You know you're on the right track. So that's everybody's misstep in all these stories. So he gets the runaround. So finally he gets the scoop. He says, some guy says, go to the asylum. He says, there's an asylum here. There's a guy, Dr. McNeil. He'll fill you in. Because he's the only, for some reason, everybody knows everything, but no one will tell him except for the one guy that everybody knows will tell him. He's like the Zadok Allen of the town of Binger or wherever we are. I forget, wherever. So, in typical Lovecraft fashion, he tells a story of Yig that is like a carbon copy of all of his other mythos. Like Quetzalcoatl comes up and he's like, that's super old. Don't get me wrong, but Yig, he's way older and he's super something. He's like, I don't know. The entire description of Yig to me was like, yeah, sure, south of the border they have Quetzalcoatlus, but here in White Country, that's what it kind of felt like to me. It was like here up in North America, we have Yig, this older and way more powerful. So don't even worry about the dudes in South America. Like, did that come across to you? Like, it was just sort of like, even with no dog in that hunt, he's like, even our monsters, better than south of the border, he says.
Yeah, Quetzalcoatl, he's like...
Yeah, Yig's a real American monster, and now we'll thank you for staying out of our business. I don't know. It just felt so crazy. Where it's like, oh yeah, they're both terrible. Oh god, these monsters are hideous. But the one we got, slightly better or worse, depending on what you think more appealing. So whatever. He's like, good news. It's just like everybody else. There's a cult. Yig's got a cult, obviously. The Indians all have different rituals, and that's, I don't know. This part, like the whole backstory of Yig feels very, usually he'll go out of his way to be like, this is how it happened and like fill in the backstory, but Yig just feels like, yeah, he just showed up. Like he's super old. He's been living here forever. In the autumn, he gets a little cranky. So watch out for that. Otherwise, that's it. Like, that's all the backstory we get out of Yig. And it's kind of a ripoff.
Maybe he doesn't like when the leaves fall off the trees in the fall.
Well, he's in the Southwest. There are no leaves. Like, this is, not Southwest, Midwest, Oklahoma, but the Panhandle. Mm-hmm. But that's the thing. They don't go into it. A lot of the stuff that Lovecraft does will say, it's older than old and yada yada. But Yig gets really short shrift, in my opinion. But whatever. This is a ghost written story, so I can see why he didn't want to like throw a whole bunch of backstory into it. Now, Nick, this doctor character. How, like, when you're first introduced to this doctor character, and he says, "Hey, come on in." He's so accommodating. How did you feel about him at first? Like, he's first introduced to us. He's like the first dude who offers no opposition. He's like, "Yep, come on inside." Like,
yeah, it's like nothing weird, nothing supernatural. Like, this is completely normal. Everything you're going to see.
He felt to me just like, oh yeah, that's this in a small town where everybody's crazy. There's the one doctor who's like, don't listen to them. They're nuts. Like, if this were the Frankenstein village in Germany, like he would be the dude in his like little Bavarian cabin smoking a pipe and reading a paper as like everybody's running past his window with a torch. And he's like, oh, those nuts. He's like, there's a completely rational explanation. But that's the thing. He sits the dude down. Our dude, shows Dr. McNeil his notes. He, basically has been trying to pull together the link between Quetzalcoatl and Yig. And the doctor's like, oh, whoa, you're the smartest guy ever when it comes to this, because most people don't, for some reason, even though there are only two snake gods, no one's ever put this together before. So he says, bravo, young man. So since you're so smart, you deserve the story. Now, I'm going to ask you how you found this, because I could see it one of two ways. When he goes into doctor's office, did you read it as either he was telling the story all day, or did he make him wait all day to tell the story?
I took it as it took him all day to tell the story, that he went in the afternoon and
I can take it either way, because it feels like the way he says it in the story is like, okay, the doctor takes him into his office, and the sun sets. He's in there for so long, and our protagonist gets angry every time like the phone rings or a nurse comes in to be like, doctor. And the first time I read this ever, I was like, so he just sat him in his office and let him sit there for an entire workday? And then like at the end of his shift, like hung his coat up and he's like, now, well, let's get this Yig business out of the...
Maybe he gave him some filing to do or some busy work. Like, here, you help me.
Well, and the other thing is even less believable because the story of Yig is so short. Like we're going to go over it in this show. It was not going to take us 8 hours and the sun will not rise and set. Mm-hmm. So I that's why I'm leaning more towards the doctor's like, oh yeah, come on, let's go talk about it. And then like, as soon as they got into this office, the doctor, like the nurse came in and he realized, oh shit, I'm 2 hours into a 10-hour shift. Wait here.
I'm a doctor.
And then he disappears.
Well, I feel like it said something like where the narrator was getting irritated because as the doctor was telling the story, he kept getting called out by nurses and
later I kind of got that.
Hey, your 10 o'clock appointment's here.
But that's part of it too, is like when he's telling the story, like before he tells the story and he's saying, I was upset that the nurses kept coming in and out. Then while he's telling the story, the narrator like pauses to give like our doctor like dramatic flourishes. Like we see him, like we break narrative so he can remove his glasses at points and like take a glass of water and be like, now back to the story. And I'm like, so if you're angry at that, let's not, whatever.
Mark says, what's more is why the guy stayed and waited.
Yeah.
What if he got hungry?
If he's a Lovecraft protagonist, he never has to eat.
They don't eat or go to the bathroom?
He's got his handy snacks in his pocket.
Yeah, he's got a handy snack. He's got some ginger
Dunkaroos.
wafers and cheese from Isn't still in his... So yeah, okay. So our doctor... I can't believe we've just glanced over this and you let it happen, Nick. Before he gets into his office... He shows him the thing because the people of the town, they say, hey, Dr. McNeil, he's got some crazy shit. P.S. Something's alive and you can look at it. So the doctor says, well, you're so smart. Let's go look at it. So he broaches the subject. He says, okay, there's this building that's like separated from this asylum. 3 people get to go in that room. It used to be 5, but 2 of them died of old age. So here he says, I'm going to open the sliding door. You look inside, but don't say a fucking word. And then we'll go back to my office and I'll tell you everything that's going on. And he's like, whatever. So the doctor bangs on the door and you hear like a rustling and a hissing. And so the doctor slides the thing open and he goes, ugh. So he goes, okay, come here. So the guy looks in and he goes, like immediately. Like it's a classic horror movie. Like don't freak out. Immediately freaks out. Uh-huh. So it's this weird, squamous, piebald, scaly, gross thing. Lies on the floor and hisses. And like, maybe this is where whatever. It's so crazy that they're like, oh yeah, there's just 3 old dudes come in and feed it or whatever. Now here, take a quick look. Don't freak out. Let's go back to my office. So, and that's another thing that would be like so irritating to me if the first theory was true. And the doctor's like, okay, be right there. Sit right there. I'll be back in 8 hours. And then like, after seeing a giant monster.
Stewing that for 8 hours.
And yeah, so I get it. I would be upset too. And it kind of reminded me of the, if you're familiar with this movie, the Snake movie known only by 7 S's. It kind of reminded me of Tim McGraw from the Snake movie. So, here's what he's like, okay. The doctor says, Yig, he's got a bunch of crazy stuff going on. In the autumn, September, October, November, somewhere in there, whatever. There's 3 months where the Indians just play their tom-toms because for some reason Yig is real pissy autumn. Why? I don't know. Because he's like, no reason. Just autumn sucks. Maybe he doesn't like Halloween. And he's like, here's the thing.
I don't know a lot about like. Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say I don't know a lot about snake behavior. So, I don't know. Do they
I know a little bit about snake behavior living in the Southwest and having to know where not to be around them.
Yeah.
Very, very few times are they like, look out for snakes at Halloween because they don't like costumes or they're not a big fan of candy. No one ever says that. But so that's the thing. He says, okay, so Yig, father of all snakes. Every snake is his kid, so don't fuck with snakes. So he's like, okay, let me tell you this story about the summer of '89. So, and the fact that we'll go through it, but the fact that this happened in 1889, keep that in mind. And this doctor is having this conversation in 1925. So 35 years after it happened. And on top of that, the doctor telling this story had to piece all of what he is about to tell us together after the fact by going on just clues. So when we hear like how the clock was ticking and she could hear this or that, you'd be like, what? You weren't there. How do you know? Whatever. So our two main characters are Walker and Audrey Davis. They're coming from Arkansas to Oklahoma. They're fastidious, young, lean, family people, I assume, coming out to be homesteaders in Oklahoma. And they're bringing their old-ass dog, Wolf. So they moved to Binger, which, not that it matters. This is a very annoying distinction, and I have to tell you that when we are during the story in 1889, the land they are living in is not called Binger yet. It will later be called Binger. So, sorry. He goes out of his way to say that. It's not Binger yet, but it will be.
So, side note.
Sure.
Suzanne says it's cold in autumn, so that could be why Yig doesn't like autumn. But the internet says it's because he's hungry.
Yeah, they do say he becomes ravenous.
Yeah, and it says something about since he's like a god or whatever, his kids get hungry, and he gets hungry and like is starving in the autumn. So maybe he needs to eat a lot before it gets too cold.
This is all after the fact.
So he's like a bear.
Yeah.
I'm gonna here. I'm going from the text alone. I'm not going from like your D&D style Lovecraft manuals. I'm going from the text alone. He just says he gets ravenous. We don't know why. Maybe
mating season.
Maybe he's got a 3-month shed.
3d6 hunger or something. I don't know.
Yeah. But
I don't do that either.
So we got a little family. We got Walker, we got Audrey, and we got Wolf. And wouldn't you know it, like the one thing that Walker is afraid of more than anything else is snakes. What a coincidence. He's so afraid of snakes that even people talking about snakes makes him faint. So this is going to get rough for our boy
Not
Walker.
Good.
Yeah, so he's totally paranoid. So, moving across, in their wagon, they've got their little covered wagon. They got Wolf. They're hearing a lot of, not necessarily the mythology about Yig yet, but everybody's like, watch out for snakes, and he's like getting paranoid and yada yada yada. So, basically setting the scene like this shit's gonna go bad.
And whatever you do, don't harm a snake. Don't.
Because eventually he starts, thanks to Firewater. Firewater is where we get most of our information because he gives whiskey to all these Indians and they start telling him, and some of the white people do as well. They say, hey, check it out. There's this legend. It's Yig, and all the snakes are his children, but Tirawa is the dad of all man. So what Yig is to snakes, Tirawa is to man. However, that makes literally no difference because it doesn't matter. I thought, because the first time you read this, you think, okay, Yig, snakes, Tirawa, man. This is a man gonna tangle with some snakes. So when the snakes go, Yig, help, a man will go, Tirawa. Nope. Fuck it. Don't care. That's the only time we'll ever hear of Tirawa. So, but He is the guy. He is the daddy of all men.
He just doesn't do anything.
Yeah, he just does jack shit. Like, and, like, why? Well, then why are you telling me this? Like, the Indians are like, yeah, here's some. They give him some charms. They give him some incantations and stuff, and it's just sort of like is feeding his paranoia, and it gets rough. So they get to Oklahoma, and the ground starts to get real rocky. And there's a storm one night, and they've been doing their best to stay away from rocks, stay away from caves. He doesn't want to go near snakes. Like, he says that neither Canadians nor the Indians will harm a snake for love nor money. But one night they got a bed down near a rock. So, and like, it's so stupid. So Audrey, she goes, okay, I'll go look around and make sure everything's cool. So she's like, do. And then she finds not a small clutch of snakes. She says there's like 24. Ugh. There's like 24 or a ton of these little baby snakes. And she's like, oh no. Now my husband is afraid of snakes. And on top of that, everybody we've run into has been giving him an impacted ass full of this Yig character. So instead of being like, I'll go tell Walker and we'll walk on, she goes, nope. She takes her rifle butt and she smashes them all into applesauce.
Oh my God.
Kills them all. And like that, it wasn't like she was panicked. She took a moment to think like, snakes. Great.
Right after they were like, don't harm a snake.
Yeah. And so she just smashes them all up.
Oh my God.
And so she goes, yep, donezo. And she's clapping her hands, and she realized that Wolf has wandered off, and she's like, oh shit, he's going to tattle.
Yeah, she's like, I hope Wolf doesn't go tell him.
Yeah, and literally, like, as she's turning around, Wolf is leading Walker back, and like there she is with the end of her rifle butt still covered in snake guts.
Oh.
And rightfully so. For a man in his state of mind, he loses his shit. He has this huge long diatribe. He's like, oh my God, like, are you the dumbest person on the planet? He's like, all the Indians, all the Canadians, all the other people, the trappers, they said, don't touch the snakes. We would have moved. He says it. He says, we would have moved on. He's like, I would have packed up the shit. We would have walked on. But you went and killed those goddamn snakes. And now I got to give more of my hard-earned whiskey to these Indians to get more charms. And, at typical Curse fashion, it takes a long ass time to strike. So, we move on, and they find a nice big flat rock, essentially, to make they're like a nice lizard. They find a nice flat rock.
Sunbathe on.
Yeah, they make a big one-room cabin, like Walker, cuts all the stuff down. And it just seems like a lot of stuff happens. I just feel like
it's just in a night. They do all this?
No, the timeline to me at least is sketchy, because after the night she smashes all the baby snakes, I feel like a couple of years pass, because because she doesn't kill the baby snakes until the 22nd day of their journey. And so like just the fact that they're walking is taking days and days and days. So the fact that what happens is they go to the place and he builds a cabin. Now it's just him building a cabin. Him and an axe and some logs. And he builds a whole cabin.
They like plant their crops and
he makes a stone fireplace. Like so it must have been years, is what I'm gonna say. It must have been years. So they get there, they build their cabin, and they're like, great, Walker makes it as inhospitable to snakes as possible, he says in the story, which, whatever, what are you going to do? Like, put a sign out front that says snakes not wanted?
No snakes allowed.
Yeah, like girls only, no snakes allowed. So then, even though they're, in the middle of nowhere, in what will later become Binger, we have some neighbors that live like whatever. It's like a mile, 4 miles, 10 miles away, whatever. The Comptons. So we have Sally and Joe Compton. So Sally will be a recurring character in the other Zealia Bishop stories. But Sally and Joe become fast friends with Walker and Aubrey. And in today's parlance, Sally Compton would be a frenemy? Because Audrey says, you know, Walker, he's nuts about snakes. He's so scared. They always see him talking to the Indians. And so Sally, she's like, hey, don't worry about snakes. Here's a crazy story about snakes, she says to Audrey. She says, she says, my husband is terrified of snakes. And also now I smashed a whole bunch of them that made him go crazy. And she goes, oh, this'll make you feel better. Here's a story. So one day, she's like, I don't know who this person was, or even if she knew them, but the story goes that a man was bit by rattlesnakes so many times that the poison made his body swell up until it bursts, disgorging everything within.
She's like a mean girl.
Yeah, that's the story she tells this frazzled woman and her insane husband. So, but whatever. You know, they're still best friends because there's literally no one else.
Who else do they have?
Yeah. So they, it's like the Comptons, Sally gets what she deserves later, and you'll see what I mean. So, you know, as I was alluding to earlier, it seems like a lot of time passes because fall does come and they harvest their first crops. And so, like, I think 6 families get together. It's like the Davises, the Comptons, and some other couple.
Lafayette.
Yeah, the Lafayettes. So
and the Rigbys.
Oh, no, okay. So yeah, there's 4.
They were there too.
Yeah. Okay. So they say, oh, you know, we're having all this, these crops. Let's have a party. Let's have some parties. So they all go over to, I think, the Davis's cabin. Lafayette brings his fiddle and they all dance around and get drunk and shit. And from what I understand, they do this a couple of times until, one of them's like, hey, Halloween, let's have another party. And they say, okay, sure. Yeah. Doing that a lot lately, but we'll do it. So it's Halloween. And they say, it's been very warm, unseasonably warm this autumn. But on Halloween, it gets super cold. Maybe that's what pisses Yig off, is the first cold snap. He's pissed. Now, keep in mind also, since it is autumn, the tom-toms have been playing incessantly. Because that's the thing. Whatever. So the Indians say, we don't touch snakes. We don't look at snakes. We don't even like to think of snakes because it pisses Yig off. So if that is your policy year round, why do you need the solid 3 months of drumming? Like,
maybe the vibration keeps the snakes away.
But he only shows up. That's the thing. Yig only shows up when you fuck with his kids. He shows up in the form of a man, and he will only fuck with you if you put his kids in harm's way. But that's part of it is everybody knows. I think they don't say this outright, but I think Walker told everybody, like, he must have been mad shit talking Audrey, because I think everybody knew that she smashed a shit ton of baby snakes. Because I think they even mentioned, like, all the Indians and everybody knows, like, yeah, she smashed up them snakes. You better hope to crap that all those charms you got work. So, whatever, Halloween party, more dancing. They get drunk, I think. And they talk about, it's the first time they've ever had to, he's been keeping the fire going since whatever, but it's the first time they had to keep it going for warmth because that's the first day it's cold. And old Wolf, he's lazy and old, so he sleeps by the fire. And one of the other couples brings their dog Zeke.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like he's basically there to do Wolf's job once because Wolf wanted to take a nap. Because if Wolf weren't so old, here's what would have happened. He would have had his hearing, and the whole time they were living in this cabin, he would have been on edge and like, this place is fucked. But since he's so old, everybody's like, he's deaf and he's blind, and he's not the old guard dog who's like, ghost, look out, master. But Zeke, he gives him a little. Because at the end of the Halloween party, Zeke is like, something's not right. And they're like, oh, poor Zeke, he don't want to go home. But in the cartoon, you'd see in his face, he's like, no, shit's going down tonight. He's like, please. And they'd be hauling him away, like, because they're all drunk, obviously. It's the Halloween party. Makeup running all over their faces, cider everywhere. And poor Zeke, he's like, no, something's going to happen. They're like, oh, Zeke, get in the wagon. And he's like, gone. Poor Zeke. He knew what was coming. So, whatever. Wolf goes to bed by the fire after old man Walker throws a log in, and they're so tired they just fall right into bed. And then things go horribly wrong.
Uh-oh.
So in the middle of the night, Audrey is having a weird nightmare that she doesn't remember, but she wakes up. She's like, it's dark. And she's looking around. She goes, it's just a nightmare. But she looks over, and there's Walker sitting bolt upright in bed, like sweating. And she's like, what's up? And he's like, don't you hear that weird noise? And it's kind of, how did this noise play to you? It felt very vague.
Yeah. She's like, is it crickets? And he's like, it's not crickets, but it's some other varmint, something like crickets. And I'm going to go smush them with, light the lantern. And
you guys came from the Ozarks, presumably also living in another type of cabin, to now live in this cabin. You've not heard like crickets or all that other shit before. That's the thing. It's like they're both looking at each other, and what I'm going to tell you later, you'll be like, that should have been deafening. But they're just sitting in bed being like, ooh, what's that strange noise? And Walker, he goes, I'm the paranoid one, but in the middle of the night, sitting bolt upright, sweating bullets, he goes, here's what happened. Since it's cold, the fire's on, all the cold critters came in to get out of the cold. They want the fire. I'm going to get up. Don't worry, honey. Don't worry, Audrey, my dear. I'm going to get up. I'm going to smash the shit out of him. He says, I'm going to take care of him. Basically, he says he's going to take care of him before they can take root. So he gets up and he's like, tired. And he's got the tin matchbox and he strikes this match. And he lights the lantern. And again, classic, like, horror movie moment. Oh, it's dark, light. Something crazy is happening. So they both scream their heads off. And we learned that the cabin that they live in, that they were just like, what's that strange faint noise, is teeming with rattlesnakes. You cannot see the floor. It is piebald with roiling serpent bodies. And that's part of the thing about this story is when I remember back to like the doctor being like, it took forever to piece this story together. And at this point where he's like, all types of varieties, they were different shapes and sizes, colors, varieties, species. And I was like, doctor, don't embellish this part. Just say there was a fuck ton of snakes, but whatever. Shit ton of snakes in this place. So, this all happens very quickly. So it's like, I'm up, strike match, lantern on, snakes everywhere, scream. Audrey, she's stern. She doesn't pass out. However, Walker falls like a sequoia. So he goes, crash, and he falls to the ground. It was a great way he described it, as if he was like hit by an arrow launched from no mortal bow or something like that. I'm butchering it. But he goes out, light goes out, and so now it's Audrey on the bed in pitch dark. Her husband has fainted onto the ground that is a roiling carpet of snakes. And she's like, at this point, she thinks of Wolf. She goes, Wolf probably never even woke up from his senile stupor. Like as if he's just under this carpet of snakes, like just all these snakes are all over him.
Can't feel anything either.
No. Don't wake up, Wolf. So
he's cool.
This is another time in the story where I feel like time is stretched out because Audrey spends an inordinate amount of time in the dark. Like she's, waiting and sitting there, and she's like, what's going on? And then she like decides to just go back to sleep. She's like, okay, that was weird. Like it went out, and she's like, oh, maybe it's just a dream. So she lays back down, and you have to think we've all done that where something weird happens. Like maybe it's a dream. You lay back down, and you're doing that weird look around, and your eyes are shifting, and you're not going back to sleep, and this isn't a dream because you just saw your husband faint onto a floor covered in snakes.
Everything's fine. It's like that burning dog in the comics, or in like the
yeah. Like she just lays back down in her bed. Everything's on fire. She's like, "Yep, I'll deal with this in the morning."
Like everything's covered in snakes.
Yeah, she's like, ugh.
Set a fire, but
and that's part of it too. Is like she keeps thinking like, "What? God, damn my tough moral fiber! Why can't I faint like my poor dumb husband?" So, so now
that's what we needed in those pioneering, old days. We needed people of, strong fiber. So.
Too strong. Husband should have been stronger. All he would have to have done, like just this much stronger, he would have been like, jump onto the bed. Faint there. Don't faint on to the snakes. No, goes down like a whatever. So now she's in the dark, and she thinks that she is the only person alive. She's like, okay, they've definitely killed Walker. They've definitely killed the dog. Everybody's gone. So now in the dark, she starts thinking of Sally Compton's story of the popping corpse after all the snake bites. So now there's like minute after minute of her listening to the clock ticking and waiting to hear this gross pop. And it, so she's starting to go crazy. Obviously, like there's no sound. I assume the rattlesnakes are still rattling, but whatever. But then the drums stop. And there's no sound whatsoever. Everything drops out. There's no drums. There's no nothing. And so that freaks her out even more. So another step further. And then the pop happens.
Oh.
So she hears the rending of flesh, the popping of a corpse, and then the smell of whatever is happening in that room.
Oh.
And so she's like, well, good night, Sweet Walker. So, it gets tragic. So now she's like, okay, that was my husband popping. Shit's gotten real. But she can hear Wolf breathing. She goes, oh my God, somehow Wolf's alive. And in the silence, she can hear Wolf breathing. She looks, and now like the moon has started to come through the window, like the clouds have cleared, and she can look, and there's the square window. But horror of horrors, there's a shape moving against the window, and she remembers, oh God, why didn't Yig kill me? Why did it kill Walker and the dog? The dog's obviously not dead, but she thought, okay, crap, that's right. Yig's curse isn't that he kills you. Yig's curse is that he turns your ass into a snake as recompense for killing his kids. And he doesn't show up as a snake. He shows up as a dude. And if you look at him close, he's all scaly. So she goes, oh shit, that's my fate. But then, brilliant. She goes, we hang an axe by the bed.
What?
Yeah. She goes, the woodsman's axe. It works on the big bad wolf. Why can't it work here? She thinks.
This is a castle doctrine home.
Yeah. She goes, stand your ground, she says. So she grabs the axe, and as this figure is moving at her in front of the window, she just goes apeshit on it. She goes, die, Yig. She goes, you took, I don't, whatever. She has a little thing. She yells at him. She goes, I hate you. She's like, you killed, whatever. Fuck your snakes and shit. Yada, yada, yada.
I killed all your babies.
And she's like, whatever. Smash cut to the next morning. Do, 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 do. Here comes the sun. The Comptons are frying eggs and bacon. They are getting ready for the day. But Sally, she's looking off into the distance over yonder. She goes, that's odd. The Davises don't have any fire coming out or any smoke coming out of their chimney. Typically, we'd be up gabbing and shit by now. So she's like, okay, I'm going to go over to the Davises, Sally Compton says. She goes, hey, Joe, I'm going to go check on the Davises. Also, want to catch up about that great party we had last night.
They might be dead, but
go
check.
She doesn't. All she knows is that there's no smoke coming from the chimney. So she shows up, and this is one of the points in the story where our narrator breaks narrative to be like, quick checkup with the doctor. So at this point, the doctor took his glasses off. He cleaned them. He put them back on. He scratched his head. He blotted away some sweat. And then he took a very deep breath.
I totally forgot about the doctor.
Yeah, the doctor's the one telling the story. So he goes, and the whole time, throughout this whole narrative, the doctor is like, listen here, goddammit. No matter what you take away from our interaction today, there is nothing supernatural. There's no monkey business. This is all pure, mechanical, physical horror. Uh-huh. So what Sally Compton saw was not supernatural. It was merely a laying out of the events of the night before. What she saw, poor Wolf, his, basically since he was sold, he didn't have much hair. So she saw the dog, his corpse bloated, purple, and split. She then saw the body of Walker hacked into tiny pieces all over the place. And Sally Compton, not Sally Compton, what's her face? Audrey Walker.
Audrey.
Yeah, Audrey, cackling maniacally because she chopped her husband up in the middle of the night. And so Sally, it affected her. But here's the thing. I bet if she had not filled Audrey's head with all those zany snake stories, she would not have had to stumble upon what she stumbled upon. So, the doctor's like, now we say, okay, oh my God. Our narrator, he takes a break. He taps his head, the sweat. He's like, oh God, that was scary. And he goes, did Audrey live? And he goes, the doctor says, she did. She, she was obviously nuts. It was just, all the stories and the Sally Compton of it all. Woo, cuckoo. She killed her husband, so we had to take her. And, then, because she was so crazy, her skin got scaly and her hair fell out and she hissed she forgot how to speak and she basically rolled around on the floor like a snake. But, nothing supernatural. And then when she died, and our dude's like, what? She's dead. Who the fuck, the door, the thing. And he goes, oh yeah, funny story. So, 3/4 of a year after we took Sally from that place and put her here and all that crazy shit happened. Audrey, sorry. Well, after we took Audrey, 3/4 of a year later, she popped out 4 kids.
What?
She had 4, not 4 kids. 4 things were born to her, and the thing that you just saw was the only thing that survived. So the thing that we just saw was not Sally. That was the thing that was the snake. Basically, it's Yig's bastard son or daughter. We don't know the sex. That was born, I'm going to say 1890.
From Audrey.
From Audrey and Yig. So that thing is a 35-year-old snake monster being looked after by 3 old Jamaican nurses. And just sort of flippantly, our Dr. McNeil, he's like, oh, maybe one day the laws will let us kill it, essentially. He's like, it's a weird thing. It's a snaky thing. He's like, we can't do much with it. I got to find someone else to train to take care of it because all the people who are taking care of it are dying of old age because this thing doesn't age. Isn't that zany? And he says, maybe the government will let us kill it one day, but until then, it just lives here. And isn't that crazy? And I feel like he just pulls his glasses off, throws his feet up on his desk, and he's like, have a good day, Mr. What the fuck? And he's just like, all right. Have fun. And so at this point, Sally Compton is an old lady. Joe, long dead. And but that's the thing. I don't. And also, here's the other crazy thing about all of this. Yig, older than Quetzalcoatl, yada yada yada, and early on in the story, they even he says like everybody knew about Yig, and you don't screw around with his snakes. And it wasn't until 1889 and this horrible event that happened to the Davises that shut people up about it. Like 4 billion years of the Earth's history, nothing happened noteworthy enough to get the townspeople of what would later be Binger to shut up about the fucking snake god. But fucking Sally Compton finds a dude chopped up with an axe, and everyone's like, oh, shoot, we don't talk about Yig no more. We don't talk about Yig, except for the one doctor. He'll tell you literally everything you want to know. And for $2, he'll let you look through the hole and throw rats in at Audrey's kid. What the fuck? Like, it's so zany. And so let's move on to a little bit of the backstory. So this was written mostly by Lovecraft. It's credited as a Zealia Bishop Lovecraft team up. However, from all of my research, it looks like the only thing she supplied him with was the setting, Oklahoma, the idea of a snake god, and basically that's it. So she basically handed that to him. He wrote everything else because he throws in references to his pantheon, obviously, which he can't help. And he got paid for that story. It was published under her name alone in the November issue of Weird Tales, 1929. So, and also this was the first of 3 collaborations. So the Curse of Yig is the first one. Second one, which we are going to cover next on the next dissection, will be the Mound. And the final one, which everybody hates except me, is Medusa's Coil, which we'll get into later. But in the Mound, it takes place like around the same area. Sally Compton is also a character. She's Grandma Compton still in the Mound because she is also in what's-his-face, Yig. Mm-hmm. So it's... Now, I take a lot of shit from other people who like Lovecraft because I like Yig, but I love the Mound. And everybody who's into Lovecraft, it's like one of their least favorite, or it's not even on their radar. It's a bummer. I think it's a great look at, like, without realizing it, Lovecraft is like, look how decadent things get when no one cares. And we'll get into it. But moral of the story is the Curse of Yig is like a mini mythology, a mini mythos. Like with the Curse of Yig and the Mound, you got this short arc in Oklahoma that still connects to the larger mythos. But Yig doesn't ever, like, Cthulhu can meet everybody. Like Cthulhu can show up and talk to Dagon. He can show up in Yig stories. Like maybe to liken it to other types of nerds, Cthulhu is like, Nick Fury.
Oh.
Cthulhu is like the Nick Fury. He can show up. He can talk to everybody else. But you're never going to see, like, if it's a Thor movie, Hulk's not going to show up and be like, hey, dude, it's me. Or I guess that's a bad example because that actually did happen in the Thor movie. But they were like equals. Like, that's the thing. Yig is such a minor character, and the fact that he shows up in this like great little mini arc, and in the second story, he just shows up as a statue.
Oh.
It's like, well, there was this crazy thing that happened with Yig, and that was nuts. But there's a big hill over there you should look into, and the guy's like, whoa.
Do you think they wanted, or Lovecraft or whoever wanted Yig to become a more popular character as opposed, like,
no, I don't
he was
think so.
It was just an aside to his other stuff.
Yeah, with Lovecraft, and I'm sure Nick, you can back me up with this. With Lovecraft's collaborations, basically CM Eddy, Bishop, whoever the collab is, they say, "Hey, Lovecraft, here's what I want in this story. Can you write it? And he goes, yep, for money. And he'll put everything they want in there, but he'll also be like, oh, but the things you want are actually part of my pantheon. He'll say, oh, you want a story about a snake god? Hey, good news. Your god is actually a lesser god in my pantheon. He did that for literally everybody.
Like Quetzalcoatl is to Yig as Yig is to Cthulhu, essentially.
Yeah, that's the thing. When in his fiction, he's like, okay, he was always at the top. Like the Cthulhu mythos is up there. All of his little like the collaborations, even like his Houdini stuff, it was like, oh, look out, like it's Egypt, but Cthulhu's somewhere. Like you can't not do it. And I think that was part of his payment too. Is like when you were going to Lovecraft, you say, here's $50, and I know that Dagon is going to show up, or like Nyarlathotep is going to be a minor character or whatever. It would be like if today, like if you were like a Robert Bloch and you were like writing episodic television, like let's say Lovecraft lived long enough to be like a Twilight Zone writer. Every other episode, there'd be like a tentacle or something, or like Nyarlathotep would like have those weird little Egyptian eyes that everybody loves because he's like, the man of the woods and all this other stuff. I whatever. That's the great thing about Lovecraft is like he shoves his pantheon into your work. But that's the only way to get absolute collaboration, though, is you make people put your stuff in their material. So where does this fall for you, Nick? Like Curse of Yig, lesser known, not super long. How does this find you? Is this good, bad, indifferent?
It was good. It was good. Like I told you before, it wasn't one of the ones that I grew up reading. I probably only, read it the first time when Del Rey came out with the horror in the museum in like, I don't know, like 2010 or whatever. Yeah. But I mean, it's definitely, like good story, like, fairly straightforward, easy to read. That's the one thing I wonder about, Zealia Bishop's influences. The language is a lot more straightforward. Like, I don't know if maybe, he wrote the whole thing, sent it back to her, and she's like, deleted a little bit of the purple prose out of it that we're used to.
Right before you said that, the same idea occurred to me, and my first initial gut reaction was like, well, he's getting paid for it. He's probably cutting a little bit of, but again, he was such a prolific writer. And if you know him and all the pieces of mail and all the things he ever wrote, I feel like he would probably embellish. So you are probably the correct one in this scenario where she trimmed it to make it less like him.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder what the original cut would look like. Because we've got 5 cuts of The Shadow over Innsmouth.
Really?
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like it's probably there's probably a first draft or something somewhere in somebody's attic in New England, because that's how they found something recently. Somebody was like, "Oh, I found the case of Charles Dexter Ward in my aunt's attic. Would you like it, Brown University?" And they're like, yeah. So I'm sure like there's probably a Curse of Yig out there that's 5 times as long. That may just be lost to history, that Zealia was like, okay, let's cut out literally everything that makes this a Lovecraft story so that when I sell it. But then you're getting paid by the word, so why wouldn't you want the embellishment? I don't know. I flopped again, Nick.
Yeah.
But okay, so 25, he's not dead until 29. So he's not necessarily phoning it in because his stomach hurts yet. I don't know. All of his mashups are, they leave more questions than answers. Especially with Zealia Bishop, because her, like, I especially want to lay Medusa's coil at her feet, because it's so bizarre compared to the rest of his stuff.
So just so I'm understanding correctly, she gave him the idea of Yig, of the Curse of Yig, and paid him to write her ideas?
Basically, like that's how he made his money in latter day life, is like he was well known through like the Boston and like the Rhode Island and those little amateur journalism clubs. And he would write letters and a bunch of people would be like, oh, like a lot of people took advantage of him. Like C.M. Eddy got probably 10 stories out of him and gave him dick. But like, I think Zealia actually paid him. There are some people who actually paid him, and you can kind of tell, like with C.M. Eddy stuff, he knew he wasn't getting paid. So a lot of that shit is really phoned in, especially the one where like, you might know the name of this one, but it's so fucking terrible. Like at the end of the story, if this were a television show, it would work. But since it is a story being written by a hand, this is when I tell you what's happening, you'll be like, that's stupid as shit. At the end of the story, in this haunted house, the protagonist is being pulled into this portal by a pair of giant hands, and he is writing his experience as he is being drug along the ground.
This is suspicious.
Yeah. Like at the end, it's like, imagine me lying on my back, holding a composition notebook, doodle-doo-doo-doo, scrolling everything that's happening to me as I'm like, ow, my back. And like, there's two giant hands pulling me up a flight of stairs. And I'm like, dee-dee-dee-dee, in a haunted house being like, going up the stairs, bet'll be in hell. And like, as I'm being pulled to the portal, I'm like, good luck. And I throw the notebook. So bad. I don't remember the name of it.
Yeah, I can't think of it either. But then at the end, isn't it like this is the monster that got him? Or
yeah, and it's like, wow, got you, bitch. I like so
yeah.
like one.
Like, give me that pen for a second.
And maybe this is the same one or not, but I feel like one was like the guy was deaf and blind, living in a house with the ghost of a werewolf.
No, I think the deaf and blind guy is the guy that gets pulled into the portal. Like he's writing still somehow.
But he's
blind. But yeah, there is another one with the ghost of a werewolf.
Because the thing is, like, I feel like in the one with the dude who's deaf and blind, he doesn't know he's living with the ghost. And so the big reveal at the end of that is like there's typing on the typewriter that's like, I'm a ghost and I'm here and I'm spooky. But the thing is, there's no reveal because the dude living there is blind and can't read.
So another question that I have.
Sure.
With the people that pay him to write these stories that they have the ideas of, obviously he's the author, but do they also get the credit for it?
Oh, they typically always got the credit.
So the Curse of Yig is by Lovecraft, but does it say written by...
When it was published under Zealia Bishop alone, and was not... A lot of Lovecraft's collaborations weren't even attributed to him until August Derleth and Arkham House started rummaging through all the old shit that he had. So a lot of the stuff... And that's the crazy thing about it, too, is one of the things that'll blow your mind is, like, when Lovecraft is doing these collaborations... He doesn't keep the story. Like, he doesn't keep it a copy for himself. He's like, okay, I put my mythos in your story, bye. And he's like, fuck it, I don't care anymore. With a lot of his stuff like that, nobody knew, or at least, the public at large, like a lot of his close friends didn't know he was ghostwriting for these publications for these people.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and the horror at Martin Beach, he wrote with... Sonia Green, his wife. That one I feel like was mostly written by her.
Is the language different? Like, is it like how like?
Okay, so the bones are Sonia, but the flesh is Lovecraft. Like the story is a story about it's like a revenge story of a mother sea monster, and it's semi-relatable, seeing as how this monster had her baby killed. But all the language and like the description of it all is very Lovecraft.
Okay, I've got a lot going on in the chat and then Discord. Okay, so Kayla says hi.
Hello, Kayla.
Vathis posted a picture in Discord for David.
What
and
the?
It's an original H.P. Lovecraft illustration from the last Necronomicon.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, the Cthulhu one.
And then Mark says from Wikipedia, Bishop supplied the story idea and some notes, paying Lovecraft to flesh it out in 1928. It looks like I can't read it. I'm blind.
Yeah, it was written in 28, published in 29.
And then Bishop sold the story under her own name to Weird Tales magazine. It was published first in the November 1929 issue.
Is there an echo in here? I said this is like the third time.
I'm just reading it from.
I know. I'm telling you. That's everything I just said. And even with the Houdini one, like it wasn't Lovecraft and Houdini. It was like, hey, I'm Houdini and I wrote this. It wasn't. I don't even know if he got co-billing with his wife on the Horror at Martin Beach. I think that he might have just let her take that. Interesting if true.
It would be a nice thing to do for your wife.
Yeah, I mean, for all the things that he did, he might as well do something nice for her because he spent their. Like here's a little Lovecraft trivia. Like they spent their honeymoon rewriting a story for a manuscript that Lovecraft left on a train. That's how they spent their honeymoon.
Huh. Well, I mean, if she's willing to marry somebody whose life is writing.
You know, she said he was an adequately excellent lover.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I remember, and he did because he never had sex before they got married, and he did all that research about having sex. Yeah.
Strange time to be alive, guys. It was the 20s.
The Roaring 20s, writing a manuscript.
Yeah, just leaving it on a train or a bus or whatever. So moving forward, the next one will totally be The Mound, which will be it's one of my favorites, even though everybody hates it.
Maybe I'll have to read it beforehand. Is it in a language? Is it in like Dominic was saying, like an easier language to read than his typical things? Because I
think so. Since this and
Medusa's.
The Mound and Yig, I think, are both written a little easier to understand, especially The Mound because it's so much longer. And I don't remember any of The Mound being like, ugh. Like if you read them at the Mountains of Madness, and that story feels like chewing your way through a granite mountain. And The Mound feels like, skipping over a field of pillows.
Is there an audiobook for it?
Yeah.
Maybe I can try that first.
I could crack into it now, but I'm, Nick's not ready. So.
Well, yeah. I think I've only read it once, but I'm looking forward to reading it again.
Since it's in the public domain, you can find them anywhere. There's floating around out there somewhere, and I would post them somewhere, but I'm sure I would get in trouble for it. But back in the old days when audiobooks were on cassette, someone put a collection of stories together, and it's like I've got it, and I'll let you listen to it, Krista. Okay. But it's like classic, old, scratchy, like cassette tape, like that constant sort of low white noise hum. Not that it's unpleasant, but it's this old guy who's like, The Temple by H.P. Lovecraft. Like, I feel like it was recorded on a phonograph where, like, the belt was wonky at parts, and they transferred that to a cassette tape, and then somehow that made it to digital. So it's this old guy who's like, H.P. Lovecraft's The Temple or The Hound. And it's like, ding, and it's like, turn the page. And one of my favorites.
That sounds fantastic.
It's a good one.
I gotta find it.
I'll send it to you, not publicly, because it might be illegal.
Wink.
Wink.
Vatha says, I think my favorite short story is The Outsider.
The Outsider's a good one.
It's a classic, he says.
The Outsider, I feel, is like almost everybody's gateway for Lovecraft. Because it's short, it's bite-sized, and it's all of Lovecraft's ethos in one short chunk.
Oh.
Like, am I blowing smoke, Nick? Or what? How would you describe The Outsider?
Yeah, I mean it's short and sweet, but it packs a wallop. Definitely,
It's yeah.
I guess the only thing missing is like the cosmology, all that stuff. But I mean, like, it's in there. It's set in the background. But
like the reason for him being.
Yeah.
But that's what I like about that story in particular, is you don't know, and neither does he. Like we'll talk to the typing square in a little bit, because I'm sure everybody's got questions and stuff. But for the Outsider, at least, it's fine not knowing, because you and the protagonist of that story are in the same spot. When you start from word one, neither of you know shit, and he'll tell you. He's like, hey man, first thing I know is waking up in this weird castle. It's dark, it smells, there's rats, I'm the only one, and it sucks down here. And you're like, oh, that sounds like a rough sitch. And it just goes from there. So you're like, okay, well, go find some shit out. And so by the end, when the ice water is dumped down the front of your pants, you're like, what? That one's fucked. That one makes you feel bad. Like, there are very few, as much as I love Lovecraft stories, there are very few that actually make you feel an emotion. I feel like there's maybe 2 or 3 I could point to that make me feel something. The Shadow over Innsmouth makes me feel scared, like legitimately scared, especially in the chase scene.
Yeah.
The Outsider makes me feel sad. Like, the picture in the house makes me feel anxious. And the rest of them, I'm like, it's pretty good.
I was by no means slamming it. I just meant that, like, the Outsider kind of exists like almost as like a one-off.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah,
like all the mythology that comes out of the other stories.
Let me run this up your flagpole, because there are stories like that, and I'm going to name all the ones that I can think of, and you could probably supplement it. So all of like the one-offs that don't necessarily touch upon the mythos but are still like strong are like that one, The Beast in the Cave. There's like no mythos, but it's like it's sort of like the same. It's the same like rug pull trick, but slight variance.
Yeah.
What's that one? The Evil Clergyman? Like, that comes out of nowhere and has nothing to do with anything.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, I had this dream once, and then I turned out to be a weird, ugly, olive-complexioned man. Okay. But what other ones are standalone like that? I'm trying to think. Because I could pull like 5 or 6 of them that aren't really mythos heavy.
Yeah, like Picture in the House.
Picture in the House, yeah. But I would say the Picture in the House is different only because it's like proto-mythos, because that's the first time Arkham is mentioned.
Yeah.
So true. I think that one skates on a technicality. Do we have any questions from the typing square? Not often is it you get to talk to 2 Lovecraftian scholars.
Mark says, it's been so long since I read Lovecraft, I'm due for a revisit. Vatha says, agreed, gives me some of the best cosmic horror feelings. Maybe he's referring to Shadow over Innsmouth. Maybe.
Yeah, Shadow over Innsmouth will give you
So he says, same with Pickman's model.
Oh, Pickman's model!
And Cool Air.
Yes, okay, yeah, boom. Those are also good standalone ones. But Pickman's model, I'm going to say skirts on a technicality too. Simply
via the Dreamland.
Yes. Maybe. The ghouls and the Dreamland. If they did not have that secret passage under Pickman's studio, it could be a standalone thing. But And even if you could even have plausible deniability if Pickman later does not become a ghoul. Spoiler alert.
Oh. So Shadow over Innsmouth isn't so does that come up again in other stories? Shadow over Innsmouth or the Innsmouth look or the Innsmouth
Innsmouth is touched upon a lot.
Oh.
It is name checked and it is also like physically visited in the thing on the doorstep because Edward Upton Pickman, whatever. Asenath, who our dog is named after, her family, Asenath Waite from Innsmouth, the Innsmouth Waites. Ta-da! Yeah, it's like name checked 3 or 4 times, but that's part of it too.
Mark has a question.
Sure.
What is your favorite Lovecraft film adaptation?
This is a no-brainer because there's only one answer. But Nick, what's yours?
Oh, geez.
Wrong.
No
wrong. No. There's only one good one, so I feel like there's you. Okay.
What's the one good one?
Dagon.
Yeah, that one is good.
So in your Lovecraft cinematic universe, you have the telling of Cthulhu, the movie called Cthulhu, which is the Shadow over Innsmouth, essentially that stars Tori Spelling. Don't get me started. You've got the 2 H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society movies, the Call of Cthulhu and the Whisper in Darkness. I don't count those because I'm pedantic. You've got Dagon, which is just the Shadow over Innsmouth. I think, I don't want to say for sure, but I think it was done by Stuart Gordon, directed.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
You've got The Dreams in the Witch House. Fucking terrible. You've got all the Reanimators.
Is that the one that's like the anthology film?
Yes.
Or am I thinking?
Yeah, it's like the anthology of horror. Stuart Gordon came back to do another Lovecraft thing, and
So Mark says Dagon is awesome, but Reanimator. So Reanimator, I've seen that with you.
Yeah,
I didn't realize that was Lovecraft.
Reanimator. Okay, the movie Reanimator, not Lovecraft. That's Gordon. That is not Lovecraft. Like for what The Curse of Yig is to Zealia Bishop, Reanimator the film is to Lovecraft the man.
Oh.
Do you know what I mean?
Uh-huh. I see.
Because I love Reanimator, Herbert West Reanimator the story. Beautiful, published in homebrew over 5 parts. Hilarious comedy. The movie, I have issue with, but I love it for the camp. I like Jeffrey Combs. But since it is Stuart Gordon, it gets weird. It gets weird.
Yeah, as I'm thinking of it, I think I'm gonna have to say From Beyond is my favorite adaptation, even though it's not, particularly faithful to the story. Yeah, I don't know.
Totally forgot about From Beyond.
It's like you said, it's Stuart Gordon. It's completely bonkers, and it's just fun.
If you ever lose the will to live, check out Beyond the Wall of Sleep. So Beyond the Wall of Sleep is one of like early Lovecraft dream cycle mythos. It's very nebulous, but so the story itself is about this guy who works at an asylum, who meets a man, a hillbilly essentially named Joe Slater, who killed his entire family. And one thing leads to another, and it turns out poor old Joe Slater is a conduit for this cosmic being who has to fight Algol, the demon star, and it gets bonkers. The movie of Beyond the Wall of Sleep is about a sex pervert turning insane asylum ladies into sex slaves.
Nice.
Joe Slater is there also.
Vathis says, I would say mine would be the Dunwich Horror with Dean Stockwell.
What? The psychedelic one?
Yeah, that's a good one.
And Mark says The Resurrected is great too, based on the
Charles
case
Dexter
of
Ward,
Charles
yeah.
Dexter Ward.
That listen, when you talk about the Lovecraft cinematic universe, my sticking point is always source material adherence, which I know is going to be impossible because everything he writes is unfilmable and blah 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 blah. However, I think the closest, until I've not seen, have you seen the new Nicolas Cage Color Out of Space?
No.
Okay. I haven't seen that yet, so I can't make a judgment call, but I think the closest thing he's come, like Lovecraft has come to like realistic depiction on the big screen, and this isn't even a Lovecraftian movie, but do you remember that Natalie Portman movie that came out a while ago where that alien thing crashes and makes a big weird thing in the forest? I think it was called Cancer.
No, I don't think I saw that.
Anyway, it's like The Color Out of Space, but not depressing. Same basic premise.
It's not Annihilation.
Oh, it might be Annihilation?
Or Annihilation.
Oh, okay.
Whatever. It's basically, when I was watching the synopsis and reading all the stuff about it, it's basically like a thing comes from space and it makes everything zany like Color Out of Space. But anyway, for me, Dagon, I think, is the closest. We've got like Zadok is there. All the key points are there. The budget isn't there, obviously.
Mark says Color Out of Space is really good. The new one with Nick Cage, he says.
I'm sure it is. I really want to see it, but I haven't gotten the opportunity yet because, for one reason.
I'm just waiting till it.
Yeah.
I'm just waiting for it to be free.
Be free. That's
on like Prime or something.
That's the thing, because I've in my youth I've made the mistake of like going out and purchasing Lovecraft inspired film, only to be disappointed. So.
Mark says, well, as far as Lovecraftian, but not really Lovecraft, you have to talk in The Mouth of Madness by Carpenter.
Mm-hmm.
Cherish says, Keith says he likes the movie Beyond the Wall of Sleep. Yeah.
I'm sure Keith does like Beyond the Wall of Sleep. That does not surprise me. I can show you Beyond the Wall of Sleep, Krista, and you'll be like, ugh, I feel gross, but I see why Keith likes it. Because keep in mind, Keith likes Phallus in Wonderland.
Oh yeah.
That's our touch point there.
All right.
Yeah. What was the other one we were talking about?
The Carpenter one.
Yeah. I wouldn't even say that's like Lovecraft, but not. Like, that's straight up Lovecraft. Like, Sutter Kane is basically ripping off Lovecraft left, right, and center in that movie. And the only thing that I think really tears it away from like the Lovecraft genre is the fact that it is like, oh, it actually, it's, and maybe that's not even the truth, because the concept of what if Lovecraft was telling the truth, and like all it was, what if he was a seer and he was selling us the zany, what if fiction was reality? Yeah, no shit. We've been there, guys. And so whatever, that's just another hokey trope that everybody loves to go back to. I want it being treated seriously, though. I don't want that wink. Like in Dagon, if they were like, if one of those people on that boat before they hit that rocket ended up with all the fish people, if one of them were reading like a Lovecraft story and was like, wink, wink, wouldn't it be zany? And then like all the zany shit happened. Don't do that. Just let's pretend like we're in this zany world, and let's not either like do nothing but wink to camera, but don't do one, break the fourth wall, and then expect me to care.
Well, I feel like doing things like that isn't like, you want to watch a movie or read a book that doesn't do that. Like, you don't want that hokey.
I'm fine with it either way. Like, I can, like with, let's say, Reanimator. I'm fine with Reanimator the movie because it's not at all like the book, and you like it because of all those things. Mm-hmm. Like, I like Jeffrey Combs as an actor. I like all the weird puppets. I like the terrible, whatever, the glow stick material they use for the injections and stuff. Like, all of it's great. but it's nothing like the story. Because, but that's what made me so angry. It made me because like when I'm like, oh yeah, because I had not seen Reanimator at all before I read the book, so I had no touchstone at all. Read the book, I'd heard of the movie, and I was like, let's take a peek. Like the zany fight scene where like Jeffrey Combs and the other dude are doing battle with the top half of a cat corpse they've reanimated. I was like, nope, too zany, checked out. Like I was Rocky up until then, and then I just like my brain shut off. I was like, nope, went from good to suck. Now I get it. I can kind of see it. It's fine. When I first saw it though, boy, did it piss me off. Anything else in the typing square? Go ahead, Nick. What's that?
I don't know. This talk had gotten me thinking about The Curse. Did you ever see The Curse? It has
Nicole Ricci, Christina Ricci.
No.
Well, the other Curse.
Wesley Crusher. It's basically the Color Out of Space in the 80s.
I've not seen that one.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, The Curse. And then The Curse 2 is about a guy whose hand turns into a snake.
Oh.
Yeah, so those are two movies to check out sometime.
Speaking of people's hands, have you... Now, this is tangentially related to this. It's not a Lovecraft story per se, but The Beast with Five Fingers. Same sort of time period, same sort of thing. Classic, hilarious pulp that became a movie later. But it's the original, like, non-threatening protagonist. Because imagine reading a story that is essentially paced and framed like Jaws, except it's not a shark. It's a hand. And imagine trying to manufacture tension where instead of a shark coming and killing those of you who stray into the water, it is merely a hand. Then at one point, two men decide, fuck it, I'm tired of being bothered by this hand. One man holds it against a wood, and another man drives a nail through it, thinking they've solved the problem once and for all.
Nice.
That's another nutty one, but yeah.
So in Lovecraft's, so was he the first like famous science fiction?
I wouldn't even say famous.
Or well, okay, so. Is there other famous or well-known science fiction horror writers from the
like for
20s?
Cosmic horror?
I guess. I mean, because he's like a cult classic right? He's considered like a cult.
Here's the thing. Yes and no. Because around this time, you have Robert E. Howard, you have Clark Ashton Smith, you have Loveman, you have Lovecraft, you have all of these writers who, like, titans. Like Clark Ashton Smith was wildly popular. No one knows about him today.
I didn't realize Robert E. Howard was at the times of Lovecraft.
Yeah, he was like 10 years younger than him. And they actually they met each other after Robert E. Howard sent a letter to Farnsworth Wright criticizing the Rats in the Walls' use of Celtic over Cymric. Long story, but they're like, hey, we're best friends.
Yeah.
But that's what set Lovecraft apart, and that's what he had. That's why his name is known, and Loveman and Smith and all those are like, what? He had cosmic horror that set him apart. Like Howard had sword and sorcery, and that set him apart. And he also had all of his sailor stuff or whatever, but all of them had their own thing. But like Lovecraft came through with like, because before that it was gothic horror, it was werewolves, it was vampires, it was ghosts, it was dark and stormy nights, it was castles. Like Lovecraft was one of the first few dudes to bring the horror home. Like it's one thing you expect to be scared in a giant spooky castle. You expect to be scared in a swamp, but you don't expect to be scared in like downtown Rhode Island.
Yeah.
Like it's one of those things where like Reanimator takes place in a fictional town, but in Rhode Island. Like, it takes place at a college. Like, that's a normal place. Like, there's a dude, for all intents and purposes, Lovecraft made the first flesh-eating zombies, and it happened at a college. Like, we've got one of those. That can happen here. Mm-hmm. And that's what set them apart. It was like the cosmic in your backyard.
Right.
It's like, guess what? There are scary things that live in your backyard, like witches and brown jankin and shit. But guess what? It doesn't even fucking matter. The deep ones, brown jankin, everything here on Earth, whoop-de shit. Because they'll come and go. Cthulhu lasts. So forget about being scared about the little shit down here. Because the big picture is there's scarier shit out there.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of Lovecraft. It's like, hey, yeah, there's scary shit here, but I wouldn't even worry about that because your life is pointless. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess that's my credo. Don't be afraid because life is pointless. So Nick, thanks for coming on and let me shout at you about Lovecraft for a little while.
Oh, absolutely.
Uh-oh.
Where'd you go?
Lost everything you said.
Uh-oh.
Try that again.
Absolutely. Anytime. I enjoyed it. Am I here?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we just froze you for a second.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's the thing about Lovecraft, man. Sorry.
It felt less sincere that time, but it was meant to be sincere.
No, I got you.
It was just, yeah.
Lag will kill sincerity. And by the time you get like the first heartfelt message, you're like, yeah, man, thank you so much. And by the fourth time you're saying it, you're like, fucking thank you. God.
I'll just type it out.
Shit. But yeah, maybe we'll just do one of these shows where we'll just pick a general Lovecraft topic. So we touch upon more than just the one. Because I do love doing the dissections because each one of them, and I hope I'm making people want to go read it. Because a lot of stuff I leave out, like as much a detail as I try and pack in, a lot of the stuff I try to leave out. Because there are parts of these stories that you're like, oh. And I have no shame about giving spoilers, especially for Lovecraft, because it's always the first sentence of the story. Like there's no spoiling Lovecraft. It's always like, Call of Cthulhu. Well, everybody's dead, and I'm looking over some weird papers. Rats in the walls. Well, I'm insane, stuck in an asylum, and they blew up my house. First sentence. Okay.
Well, that was, like the last time you guys did the dissection of the 3 different stories, I read two of them, and I was like, but this basically just gives you the end.
Here's Reanimator. Reanimator, first sentence. Herbert West made zombies, and now he disappeared. Anyway.
He reanimated.
Yeah, it's basically like every story. Everyone.
I like read some study somewhere where it said that people enjoyed like better when it was spoiled beforehand. I don't know. They did some kind of scientific study about it.
I'm willing to agree. Like I am not one because here's the thing, guys. The resolution of a story isn't the part that fucking matters. I mean, kind of, but it's like the least compelling part because guess what? There's no such thing as a new narrative. So when you sit down to watch, read, experience, whatever, here's what's going to happen. You're going to have a main character. There's going to be an inciting incident, and then there's going to be resolution. Mm-hmm. So if a movie comes out and it's a spy thriller, guess what? It's going to be thrilling, and the spies are going to win at the end. A good story, you know how stories end. We all know how stories end. Don't tell me spoilers mean anything, because we know what's going to happen. I think giving the spoiler alert at the front and then backfilling everything and how we got there. Because that's how shit happens in life. Very seldom do you meet someone and then live through their story with them.
Yeah, right.
Like when we did the Statement of Randolph Carter, you, as the reader, the police, everybody involved are getting this after the fact. So, if you're a cop and you show up and there's a guy passed out in a graveyard, or maybe he's covered in mud and he's got a big Ghostbusters style backpack that's just a radio and he's got 90 miles of cable and he's like, disheveled. The first thing you're going to do is to be like, hey, what happened here? And the first thing that old Randolph is going to say is like, Harley went and do a thing and now he's gone. Like, you're going to get the spoiler. Yeah. The first thing Randolph says is like, yeah, he's down there and a wizard got him. Let me back up. That's all. That's how life is.
Well, I mean, and there are people, and I used to be one of those people who would read the end of a book before starting it because, I mean, obviously, like in certain series and stuff like that, things could end on a cliffhanger, or it's just the end of the story. But like, you read the end to know if you should bother reading it.
I get that. The only time I don't want a spoiler is if it is like a legitimate mystery, like if it's a murder mystery or whatever, then whatever. But even then, I'll spoil it. Like the Pendergast series, it's 20 books deep. Each one is a mystery. I can't say I didn't spoil a few for myself, but that's the great thing about those things is like when you see the spoiler, it's like, oh, it turns out there was never a murderer at all. It was a disease carried by a parrot brought here on a cream pie. You go, what? And you want to read the book. Read
it. Right.
You don't say, oh, well, it was a disease brought on by a parrot carried on a cream pie. Now I don't have to read this book, Chuck. Mm-hmm. No, if it's a good story, you'll want to read it.
Right. And that's like with the books that I read, I read like the romance and stuff like that. I like to know at the end of the story that they're together at the end. I don't like when they're not together at the end unless it's a series.
Maybe it's a corollary. Let me ask you this.
Who?
Both of you. Maybe if... I don't know. I thought I had a theory, but every time I turn it over, it doesn't work. Because like maybe the more you care about it, the more you want to keep the surprise. But I care about shit that I just spoil all the time. Because like, let's say, whatever. A movie comes out, anything in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, if I knew that I could not scrape together a single fuck to watch it, I would say, hey, Andy, hey, Adam, what happens in that movie? And it would be like, well, superhero shows up, gets his powers, fights a villain in the end. Oh, good. I saved myself $20. Mm-hmm. There's nothing compelling about that. But I will, even though I'm waiting for it to be free, I am waiting for The Color Out of Space. And if it weren't a Lovecraft movie, I might even pay money for it. But I've been burned. So we're waiting.
Mark says it's the journey, not the destination.
Exactly.
And he says, I had to give on Pendergast. It was never ending.
Yeah. Mark said that?
Yeah.
Mark, buddy, Pendergast. So here's the thing. Yeah. Like 17 books in, there was a steep drop off. And the last 4 have been really hard to get through. But that's for another day. I guess that's it.
We were wrapping up like a half hour ago.
Yeah, I keep doing these false wrap ups, and then somebody says something
Sorry.
gets me started again. Nick, do you want to point anybody towards your music?
Yeah, sure. Oh, and by the way, I wanted to thank you on the one of the episodes a little while ago. You actually plugged me and said some very nice things, and somehow I had missed it and didn't get to it until I don't know, a couple weeks ago, and I was like, well, that really warmed my heart, and I really appreciated that. So, thank you for that.
Here's the thing that you'll know I'm serious, because if you want to believe me, there are 3 pieces to this puzzle. The first one is you show me something and I go, oh, whoa, that's great. Having no experience with it, not looking into it, just wanting to make you feel good. Then I'll give it a cursory glance. If it's good enough that I'll want to come back to it. I'll tell you again, hey man, I checked in. Now, because the first time was a lie, didn't look. Second time, starting to look, getting a little interested. Maybe you don't have the time to look fully. I'll check in again and be like, hey man, really been digging in, double down, say it's great. By the third time I've listened to it, I have an actual opinion, and that's when you'll hear it. If there's just the one and I say, hey man, that's great shit, you never hear from me again, you know it sucked. But if you hear from me at least 3 times, then your wish has been granted and it's good.
Right.
Yeah, good shit.
I also, you have to sort of take into account that here's the thing. I can't describe myself, but I can describe others very well. So here's the thing about you, Nick. Your music is in that sort of weird genre that sits in like that gray nebulous no man's land where like, so there's a band I just found recently that was talking about in Discord, the Dead South.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. I actually saw them play live.
So YouTube was like, hey, you like weird shit, check this out. I saw the dude, I saw the hats, I saw the beards, I thought this is weird, I'll check it out. Fucking the first 3 notes of that banjo, I was like, sold. I immediately thought, aha, this is weird stuff. It's like Nick's music, but also Adam likes weird shit. And I was like, hey, Adam, if you haven't already, check it. And he's like, I already did. And I was like, knew it. So it's like that. It's like your 16 horsepower, your Dead South. It's your, I don't know. Like for me, there are 2 types of people, Nick. There are your type of people who are your shares, believe, and then there are your dried owls.
Oh, wow.
I'm one of these people who can listen to both because I'm neither Cher nor you. So I should have, again, this whole show has been one misfire after another, but if you send me, you have to send me shit. I got a link to it. I'll put a link in the show notes so you can check out Nick's music on Bandcamp.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's free.
Woo.
And
you can just have it.
You can just totally do it. And I listen to it. And so here's the thing that always gets me too, is when you know someone, you find out they do music, and then you hear their singing voice, and you think, no, that's not them. That's not you, right? That's totally somebody else singing. I mean, obviously it is you.
Oh, yeah, that's me.
But it does not sound, that's the thing. You hear someone singing, and you're like, what? No. But yeah, people singing voices, maybe it's, I've got one of those weird audio things where if like you slightly change the pitch of your voice, I'm like, who the fuck? Like, face is the same, you just alter your voice slightly and I'm lost.
It's like if you're a baby and you shave your face and the kid doesn't know who you are.
Yeah, it's like there's some sort of amnesia for faces that the name of which I'm blanking on.
I don't know.
It's like prosopagnosia or something. Whatever. I've got that for voices. Guys, thanks for coming and watching. This is the 5th time we're wrapping it up. Appreciate it. Nick, thank you. Typing Square.
Thank you.
Everybody, we will see you next time on another edition of a live show that we do on Fridays.